Hey everybody, what is up out there in podcast land? The home of the free, the land of the brave. This day, above all others, should personify that as we give you an early recording this week of Sports Frenzy 2.0. I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane. As always, very happy to have you aboard. The Conquistador, Dave Height, is not here because we're taping a day early. It's November the 5th. It is Election Day. Dave and I have a concert tomorrow night. We will not be able to record at our normal time. So you're stuck with me for 1 week and 1 week only until this happens again with some kind of a family obligation or something that will screw up everything, throw a monkey wrench into the works. So I hope you went out and you voted today. Very important to do so. Your vote does count. I will not bully you like the idiot Will Ferrell. Check out the weekend edition, and we'll talk more about that. Now, the weekend edition will be fine and normal, except still without the Conquistador. But it will be a full-blown regular edition, music, movies, TV, and streaming with me, the Maestro Kevin Crane, and of course a full-blown, last-ditch, pseudo kind of sort of election segment for the dumbasses of the week. I got to get one more shot or two or three or four in at all the idiots who have tried last-ditch attempts to swing voters one way or the other and have failed miserably because they're just idiots. But that's Saturday morning. For now, it's all about sports, and I have decided, since it's election day, and we're all probably by now sick and tired of hearing about this election, whether it's local, whether it's federal. Nobody cares anymore. It's all over and done. You're either in line right now, or you're not voting, or you've already voted. So let's not even discuss it. I am actually going to do something. It's not unprecedented, but it is very close. No dumbasses this week on the sports edition. I will not lower myself on this day. This day we need to be above the fray. We need to be better. We need to rise above the muck and the mire. And because of that, I will forego for 1 week only. Again, it happens once in a blue moon, but I am specifically for this episode only saying no dumbasses. Let's stick with positivity. Wait, no. I back off on that. Because the first thing we're going to talk about, of course, is the Chicago Bears. So, when it comes to generalized dumbasses at the end of the episode, no. Not this week. No. I want a better country for you and me and our children and our grandchildren. So no dumbasses here on Sports Frenzy. This early episode here on November the 5th. But we still got a lot of sports to talk about. And yes, the Bears. The Chicago Bears. My God. They're going to do it again. They are going to screw up another young quarterback and destroy any chance he has to become a success in the NFL. They did it with Mitch Trubisky. They did it with Justin Fields, and now it looks like they're going to do it with Caleb Williams because they are too stupid in the front office and they're too cheap to bring in a big-time, big-name head football coach who will take over the room and won't put up with garbage, won't put up with undisciplined play, which we saw last week with the Commanders game at the end in that idiotic Hail Mary. And then this week, going into Arizona to play the Cardinals, what was that? The Bears lose 29-9. Caleb Williams has nobody, obviously, to settle him down, to tell him you need to get your head back into the space it was in a month ago. Because now he's back to being the erratic kid he was the first few weeks of the season. Shane Waldron has lost control of the offense again. DJ Moore just gets paid, and now all of a sudden he's becoming a cancer in the locker room and on the field. Keenan Allen, get rid of Keenan Allen. The trade deadline, as I'm recording this, is about 20 minutes away. And the Bears would be smart to get rid of Keenan Allen. He has done nothing. He was brought in because he had a connection with Caleb Williams. He was brought in to try to give Caleb all the weapons he possibly could have. DeAndre Swift, very bizarre season for DeAndre Swift. First 3 games of the season, he was nothing. He was terrible, and now he's basically the lone weapon that this offense can depend upon. Keenan Allen's dropping passes. He's shot. He's a shot fighter. He needs to go away. And if he wants to go play with a contender, trade him right now at the last minute. But there is no point in keeping him on this roster. He's taking targets away from Rome Odunze. And of course, if DJ Moore is going to pout like a little baby, well, we're screwed, aren't we? Because he's on this roster for the long term. So we've got to figure out a way to make this work between Caleb Williams and DJ Moore, just like in Dallas. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, they've got issues. They've got to make it work. But we don't need Keenan Allen. He's on the last year of a mega deal. Get him out of town. Trade him for a 7th round pick like they just did today for their 3rd string running back Khalil Herbert. Now, you might say, well, that sounds like a pretty decent deal for a 3rd string running back. Not when the 3rd string running back was in demand. The one thing the Bears do well is develop running backs. And now what have you done? You've sold your 3rd string running back for basically nothing. And I get tired of this. Oh, well, all draft picks in the NFL are so valuable. No, they're not. I'm sorry. Anything 5th round back is worthless. All you're going to do is draft a body to fill a roster spot for a year or two. Once again, Ryan Poles shows he is a terrible, terrible general manager in a long line of terrible, terrible general managers for the Chicago Bears. Can't hire a head coach to save his life. And the whole goodwill thing with the Carolina Panthers pick is over and done. You take advantage of a group of idiots, but you're an idiot yourself. What does that say? Outside of the fact he was able to manipulate the Panthers for Caleb Williams and DJ Moore. Now, they're not getting along, so wow, how great has that turned out? You can't. Matt Eberflus is the biggest idiot among all the idiots we have ever had as head coaches. You want to say Mark Trestman? I'll say at least Mark Trestman got to the playoffs once. Matt Eberflus is never going to sniff the playoffs. 29-9, an embarrassing loss to the Arizona Cardinals. No touchdowns on offense, 3 field goals, and then they let up a big run right at the end of the first half that basically blew the doors open. Second half, the team was lost, unfocused, didn't care. As I mentioned, DJ Moore angry at Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams doing his best to try to be a leader. But they're going to do the same thing to him they did to Mitch Trubisky and to Justin Fields. 1 year in as a number 1 first-round pick. And they're going to switch everything over to stagnate his development. They're going to have to bring in a new head coach, a new offensive coordinator, set him back a year immediately. And I blame it from the top down. The McCaskies are terrible, terrible owners. Awful owners. They got lucky one time back in the 80s. And they're going to sit there and rest on their laurels and go, we have the greatest team of all time, arguably, in the NFL. In 1985, what have you done since then? You got to the Super Bowl once since 1985. You've left a pathetic legacy of incompetence and abject stupidity in terms of who you hire as head coaches, who you let run this team as general managers, even Kevin Warren as a president, who's supposedly in line to take over for Roger Goodell. What is Kevin Warren doing that is so brilliant? This organization is poisonous from the top down. They're 4-4 right now. They'll be lucky to go 5-12. They should beat the Patriots, I don't even know how I feel about that in terms of confidence. With Drake May back, Drake May can make some plays. The genius, the defensive genius, Matt Eberflus, can't even get the defense playing right. And we've already seen, now we're having attrition with, Montez Sweat couldn't play. Come on! When you start seeing this, when you start seeing these players begging off due to minor injuries, Eberflus has lost the locker room. Eberflus has lost the team. These guys aren't willing to go full force into the fire for him because he's an idiot. He's an abject, complete idiot. And the front office to continue to keep him on. Keep Shane Waldron on. This is all about, we don't want to admit we were wrong. You're wrong. You're always wrong. You're always wrong. And next year you're going to hire some third-rate coordinator because you don't have the balls, you don't have the guts, you don't have the stones to hire somebody like a John Gruden or get Pete Carroll out of retirement. Get somebody in there and give them the power. Bill Belichick. Give them the power. Let them run things. You won't do it because you're a weak, pathetic organization. You can't even figure out how to set up your new stadium. I have gone in the last 6 months from elation as a Bears fan to once again the depths of depression. And I know, I can sit there and say, well, you could be a Panthers fan, you could be a Browns fan. The Bears are barely half a step ahead of those organizations. And at least they can say the Panthers are technically an expansion franchise. The Browns are technically an expansion franchise. So the structure and the ownership has not been in place as long as with the Bears. And then the other two teams we root for. 2 weeks in a row, I believe. I believe this is 2 weeks in a row where the Bears have lost, Dave's Dolphins have lost, and my Buccaneers have lost. Now, the one thing I will say about my Buccaneers is that God bless them, they fight. They fight and they fight hard, and I love Baker Mayfield. God, I love Baker Mayfield. Last night, they lost to the Chiefs in overtime, 30-24. And of course, the big controversy here is that Todd Bowles should have gone for two at the end of the game, at the end of the fourth quarter. This is why, as much as I try to say maybe he's not a bad coach, when the Buccaneers look good, for 58 minutes of a game, I try to praise him and say, boy, they look good. He's got them fired up. They play hard for him. And then he does something like this. He's got the chance to knock off the only undefeated team left, the two-time reigning Super Bowl champion, Kansas City Chiefs. They have fought them toe-to-toe the entire game at Arrowhead Stadium, and instead of going for two, I think fans would have appreciated it more if they'd lost by 1 point, going down fighting, then let's kick the field goal and hope for the coin toss to go our way in overtime. Yes, so that's what Todd Bowles did. He kicked the extra point, and then you could tell when the coin toss for overtime did not go the Buccaneers' way. Baker Mayfield just looked up at the sky and said, oh fuck, we're screwed. And they were, because the Chiefs went right down the field and scored, ending the game. Awful, awful move by Todd Bowles. Awful move. Should have gone for it. Would have gained more respect in the locker room, more respect from the fans, more respect from the media, more respect from everybody. If he had just gone for two to try to win the game at the end of the fourth quarter. So the Buccaneers now are in trouble, 4-5. Falcons now basically have a 3-game lead on the Buccaneers because of the tiebreaker. The Falcons have already beaten the Buccaneers twice. And the Bucs still have to deal with the injury issues, hoping to get Mike Evans back before Thanksgiving. Although I will admit, at least guys like Cade Otton have stepped up. He's got something to work with. Baker Mayfield, though, has impressed me beyond all belief. This is what's going to happen with Caleb Williams going back to the Bears. This is what's going to happen with Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is going to get shipped out in 3 years from the Bears, go to another team, and end up being a superstar. He's going to end up throwing for 30, 35 touchdowns a year. Just like Baker Mayfield leads the NFL in touchdown passes. Smart organizations take advantage of dumb organizations. And the Bears are a dumb organization. Tampa Bay is a smart organization, although I still will hold my judgment 100% on saying that about Todd Bowles. And then Dave's Dolphins put up a really valiant effort, a valiant fight against the Buffalo Bills, but they lost 30-27. Basically, I've got to say the Dolphins season is over. They are down to 2-6 now. I don't see how they dig out of that hole and get into the AFC playoff picture. Tua's been there the last couple weeks now. He's fine, but I'll tell you the problem. Number one, it's the receivers. Something is wrong now with Tua coming back, and now he doesn't have the connection with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Devon Achane is a superstar. Devon Achane is doing everything for the Dolphins, catching the ball, running the ball. But now all of a sudden, after the time off with another concussion, there's no connection between Tua and Tyreek Hill. There's no connection between Tua and Jalen Waddle. And I think Jalen Waddle is an absolute joke. He's a piss-poor excuse for a number 2 receiver. When he's not hurt, he underperforms. If I was Miami, if I was that front office, I would look to see how I can get rid of him, when I can get rid of him for the least amount of damage to my salary cap. Get somebody else in to pair up with Tyreek Hill, because Jalen Waddle's a piece of garbage. He has been since he came into the NFL. He's overrated. He does not do anything to take pressure off of Tua and Tyreek Hill. In other news, of course, the trade deadline I mentioned. The Lions got their pass rusher. Everybody's been talking the last couple weeks about the Lions defense. They've got it still looking like the best team in the NFL, but they've got to tweak things a little bit. If they're going to go for it, you got to go for it. Of course, losing Aiden Hutchinson was a massive blow to the defense, so they get defensive end Zadarius Smith from the Browns. The Browns, of course, with an embarrassing loss at home this week to the Los Angeles Chargers. So now they're in sell mode, even more so than they were a couple weeks ago. We knew this was coming because the Jets had too many wide receivers after acquiring Devontae Adams, so they trade Mike Williams to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were desperate need of wide receiver help. And then longtime Saints lockdown cornerback Marshawn Lattimore goes to the Commanders, as the Commanders sit around there and go, oh my God, 7-2. We might actually be good. Let's start making this team better. You know, Dan Quinn, defensive coach, ecstatic with getting Marshawn Lattimore. And the Saints, by the way, fired their head coach. I fucking told you so. He wasn't the first head coach fired. That was Robert Saleh. But it was pretty close. Dennis Allen with New Orleans was my first choice as the number 1 first head coach to get fired this year. Ugh. Second. Just let me point something out, though. Dennis Allen as a head coach in the NFL. His record, 26-53. I don't know what kind of cutoff you want to put on this in terms of games coached. Yes, there were worse coaches when it comes to guys that slipped in for 1 year and were abysmal and were disasters. guys like Richie Kotite. We all get that. But Dennis Allen coached over 75 games in the NFL as a head coach, and he is looking at a 26-53 career mark. Doesn't it have to be the worst ever for somebody who's coached that many games? Not just a one and done fluke, made a bad decision. Mike Tomsula, there's another one that comes to mind. But these guys were, Dennis Allen, this was his second opportunity. Somebody thought that actually he should be the head coach with New Orleans after his abject failure with the Raiders. 26-53 as a head coach for Dennis Allen. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. And that's another team in abject, absolute disarray. So now what do the Saints do? We just mentioned they traded Marshawn Lattimore. Nobody seems to like Derek Carr. I don't think Derek Carr's burning bridges. I just think you've got a lot of egotistical players on the offensive side of the ball. And, of course, Michael Thomas, former wide receiver for the Saints, should shut his fucking pie hole because he was never healthy, always hurt, got paid, and then did nothing. So for him to call out Derek Carr as a bad quarterback seems a bit hypocritical. So I will say that. Shut the fuck up, Michael Thomas. You didn't do anything in your career other than sit on the sidelines collecting a paycheck, hurt all the time. So you are not the person I want to hear from when it comes to an objective discussion of how good Derek Carr is as an NFL quarterback. And I'll say it again. Fuck you, Michael Thomas, because you screwed me over in fantasy football for years. And the sad and sorry thing is, the millions of dollars you collected for doing nothing. And you think you can sit out there now and criticize Derek Carr? No. You don't get to do that. Now, that being said, there are problems in New Orleans. Is it Derek Carr? I don't know. You've got one of the best running backs in the NFL still, even though he's hitting that 30 mark in terms of age. Alvin Kamara still looking stellar, just got a contract extension. You can't blame it on Alvin Kamara. He's doing everything and anything he can, even though he's got a couple of issues in his past. We've seen this with a lot of the great players in NFL history. We saw it with O.J. Simpson, duh. Ray Lewis, duh. Lawrence Taylor, duh. But Alvin Kamara is the only guy right now worth anything on that Saints roster. And I don't want to hear about Taysom Hill. I think that whole experiment should have been played out 2 years ago. And Chris Olave, I know, he's out again with a concussion. I'm not ripping on him. I'm not comparing him to Michael Thomas, but I will say I don't think he's that good of a receiver. Michael Thomas was wasted potential. I think Michael Thomas, if you take them both, Olave versus Thomas, healthy, Thomas 10 times better. But neither one can stay on the field. Now, I don't know what Derek Carr's contract looks like for the future, how soon the Saints can reasonably get out from under it and start to rebuild. But I think it's something they've got to start looking at. And then a team that is absolutely screwed through nobody's fault but their own. Sound familiar, Bears? The Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys just lost to the Atlanta Falcons 27-21. It wasn't even that close. There were so many embarrassing moments for the Cowboys. Play calling, breakdowns on defense, and now you've paid your quarterback. Dak Prescott is there. You're stuck with him for the long term. Your top wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, you're stuck with him. He's there for the long term. They don't seem to get along. They don't seem to be on the same page. And now Dak Prescott has a hamstring injury that will keep him out for multiple weeks. So you're going with Cooper Rush. CeeDee Lamb has a shoulder injury. Might be able to play against the Eagles this week. Might not. And with the way things are shaking out right now, the Cowboys, this might be a lost season. Mike McCarthy, his contract was not extended or renewed. He's done after this year. So you know the Cowboys are going to be looking for a new head coach. But the problem is with their moronic, egotistical owner, Jerry Jones, who doesn't seem to understand he's the problem. He's been the problem for 30 years. He forced one of the greatest, if not the greatest, head coaches out in Jimmy Johnson. They were destined for a run that could have made them the greatest dynasty ever. But Jerry couldn't handle it. He didn't want to share the glory. He didn't want to share the responsibility. And I used to love the Cowboys, especially when they brought my man Jimmy Johnson in. Of course, me being a Miami Hurricanes fan, loved Jimmy Johnson. So that is a transgression I will never, ever, ever forgive Jerry Jones for. That's when I cut all ties with the Cowboys. And he's paying the price right now. And the way he's got this team set up with all the money invested in Dak Prescott, all the money invested in CeeDee Lamb, won't give any power to his head coach, won't give any power to anybody in the front office other than himself. This is a similar situation in many ways to the Chicago Bears. It's ownership. Ownership is the problem. You can find about 7 or 8 franchises in the NFL where ownership is the problem. And the Bears and the Cowboys are at the top of the list. And this is why neither of these two teams has won a Super Bowl in the last 3 decades. Roughly, approximately, give or take a year or two. I know the Cowboys' reign ended right around the mid-90s. So, okay, don't hold it against me if I'm off by a year or so. So in other games we did not hit on here, we did not discuss from last week, NFL Week 9, I told everybody on this panel, our 8 experts, I told them my island pick was going to come through. My last ditch Jets pick was going to come through, and it did. The Jets beat the Texans at MetLife Stadium 21-13 last Thursday night. Boy, I'll tell you what, though, the first half was about as ugly as it could be for the Jets. But somehow in the second half, they figured it out. They started to look like the team that we have been hearing about, that New York media has been talking about for the last couple of months. So now you wonder, can the Jets get on a run and somehow figure out a way to slip and slide into the playoff picture. They have got a lot of work ahead of them. The Texans have a lot of work ahead of them. The Texans did not look good at all. There is something wrong with that team. Maybe there's a little bit of the sophomore slump, the regression in the second year for C.J. Stroud. Tank Dell, you would expect he would have stepped up. He did have a good game against the Jets, but what happens when Nico Collins comes back? Stephon Diggs is out for the year. They're not using Dalton Schultz at tight end the way they should. Joe Mixon has looked really, really good, but for some reason, this team just isn't firing on all cylinders. Now, they will bumble and stumble their way in. They will win the AFC South because the rest of that division is trash. But are they going to get in at 9-8? Maybe a week 10-7? The Texans just don't look good right now, and they're facing another loss this week. And we'll get to that in a few minutes. In other games that we haven't touched on from last week, the Browns looked like they were going in the right direction, finally. A new leader on the field with Jameis Winston after Deshaun Watson out for the year with his injury, his Achilles. I still don't buy into the Chargers. There's something not right with the Chargers, just like with the Texans. Something not right, but both teams have great head coaches. And while DeMeco Ryans is still trying to figure out in his second year what he's got now with this current roster with the Texans, Jim Harbaugh just knows how to coach football. The Chargers dominate the Browns in Cleveland, so much for the Jameis Winston bump in energy, in offensive output. So now that pretty much officially eliminates the Browns from playoff contention for all purposes. And the Chargers now, you have to start to wonder how good this team could be. Justin Herbert, now kind of a game manager, still doesn't have the weapons. J.K. Dobbins continues to impress. Watch out for the Chargers as a playoff team once we get into January. We mentioned Dennis Allen getting fired as head coach of the Saints. That was due to the fact that they lost to the woeful Carolina Panthers 23-22, the 7th consecutive loss for the Carolina Panthers. And the last thing I'll say, as a kind of, sort of, maybe Derek Carr apologist, is that keep in mind that a lot of those losses were with Derek Carr injured. So you can't blame him for all of it. Kind of knew this was coming. An angry Ravens team bouncing back after an embarrassing loss to the Cleveland Browns. Destroy the upstart Denver Broncos 41-10 in Baltimore. But still, I cannot understand how a team this good, the Ravens, are stacked. The defense is an issue, which you rarely would ever think with the Baltimore Ravens. How many times can you look back at the Ravens' history and say the defense has been the issue? Because they have lost to the Raiders and they have lost to the Browns. They're 5-3. They'll probably get into the playoffs, but it's going to take a massive performance from Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, putting up 40-plus points against somebody like Buffalo or Kansas City to get to the Super Bowl. The Lions continue to dominate the NFC. In nasty conditions, they beat the Packers at Lambeau Field 24-14. The Rams continue their resurgence, even though Puka Nacua, you look at his stats if you play fantasy football and you go, oh no, he got hurt again. Oh no, there were rumors that he had tweaked his knee again during the week leading up to this game in Seattle with the Seahawks. What happened? No, he got in trouble for throwing a punch and he got kicked out of the game. So he screwed you this week in fantasy, but he's healthy, he's fine, and the Rams still managed to go into Seattle in overtime and beat the Seahawks 26-20. I don't know what's wrong with the Seahawks. I don't. They put up a ton of points. Geno Smith, I've never been a big Geno Smith fan, but he has got to be one of the most underrated, overlooked quarterbacks of the last couple years. He's doing everything he possibly can. Kenneth Walker is solid. They've got 3 really good receivers. Is it the defense? It's not the Legion of Boom anymore. Wow. So the Rams continue their winning ways now that they're healthy. They are a team that was in preseason expected to get in the playoffs. Now, after a really rough first 6 weeks, they are bouncing back and looking really good. The Vikings on Sunday Night Football beat the Colts in a pretty ugly game, 21-13, putting Joe Flacco in. Didn't seem to help the Colts offense all that much. I understand the move. I approve the move because Anthony Richardson looks like hot garbage. Now, I don't think Shane Steichen seems to know what he's doing. He has taken a roster that is very mediocre. Jonathan Taylor, yes, you have one of the best running backs in the league, but he is out half the time with injuries. He's a China doll, like so many of these wide receivers and running backs seem to be. And they are trying to just win now. I think they see this window as right now for the Colts, this year or next year. They don't have time anymore to wait on Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, between injuries and inconsistency and bad play in general, doesn't deserve to be starting right now. He should sit on the bench. He's got one last shot. He's got to learn how to play the game. He's got to learn how to play quarterback at the highest level. We're already hearing that it didn't happen, but it wouldn't have shocked me if the Colts had traded him today. And they decided, let's start all over again, because you have not seen anything from Anthony Richardson to show that he gets it on the professional level. But now Joe Flacco didn't do much better against Minnesota. So the Vikings moved to 6-2. They are firmly entrenched as one of the wild card teams, I will say, in the NFC. I don't see them getting by the Detroit Lions, but definitely can see them getting in as a wild card. And once again, kudos to Sam Darnold for bringing his career back from the dead. And then we talked about the Buccaneers and the overtime loss to Kansas City last night on Monday Night Football. So that's going to do it for our talk about the NFL. You're going, well, Maestro, what about this week's picks? Again, I'm doing this a day early. It's election day. We really don't have a lot of our panels picks in yet, so what I will do is I will stress to you, recommend to you, that Thursday night before kickoff of the Bengals Ravens and Appalachian State and Coastal Carolina, two of the picks that we will be making, you check out our Facebook page for all of our picks, college and pro, 10 college, 10 pro picks. I will run down real quick pros first, and then we're going to talk college football. And then I'll run down those 10 games as well, but no picks. I will not tell you the panel's picks because, again, very few of our panel members have got their picks in. We will be picking the Bengals Ravens Thursday night. The Bengals have to win this game. And we've been saying this about the Bengals, it seems like, since week 3. And this is going to be a beast of a game for them to win. The Ravens also need to win this game. They have stumbled too many times early on for as good as they are at 5-3. They have got to win this game to keep pace with the Steelers. And the Bengals defense is not good, and that's what worries me. I could see a very high-scoring game here on Thursday night. Problem is, Joe Burrow looks like he'll be without T. Higgins. Baltimore right now favored by 6 points. I think that's pretty close to being accurate. Joe Burrow is having a great year, fully healthy now. But there, again, is something wrong with the Bengals. Another team, another front office that won't spend the money, that won't put the right people in place to make that team successful. And unfortunately, even though Joe Burrow is trying to do the best he can, Chase Brown, great young running back, trying to do the best he can. Now with Zach Moss out for the year, it looks like. Jamar Chase now is stuck without T. Higgins. He is the primary target. Yes, Mike Gesicki at tight end's having a nice little run here, but is that enough to keep up with the Ravens? I fear the Bengals will fall to 4-6 and put themselves on the verge of elimination from playoff contention. Then we have the Munich game on Sunday, November the 10th. Giants and the Panthers. Who cares? Bills and the Colts. This is a must-win for the Colts. And if the Bills win this one, they will pretty much lock themselves down as one of the top 3 seeds in the AFC. Broncos at Chiefs. The Chiefs continue their unbeaten run. But will they look ahead to the Bills on the road in Orchard Park? Because that could be the one stumbling block for Pat Mahomes and company. 49ers at Buccaneers. 49ers coming in rested. Obviously not going to be at full strength without Brandon Ayuk, but they could get Christian McCaffrey back. That will spell trouble for the Buccaneers. Steelers at Commanders, probably the best game of the weekend. Steelers have had a week off to rest up. Can they figure out the conundrum that is Jaden Daniels? I still think he's vastly overrated. Is he the best rookie quarterback out there? Absolutely. No question. No question. But I see all these pundits on ESPN, especially when it comes to fantasy football. Oh, he's the greatest. He is not the greatest quarterback out there. The Commanders are damn lucky to have him, and he's going to grow into something special. Probably going to be the second coming of Lamar Jackson. But not yet. Not right now. And I think the Steelers will give him a nice little wake-up call. J.J. Watt will give him a nice little wake-up call. or TJ Watt, I'm sorry, not JJ Watt, his idiot retired brother, who I'm sick of seeing in commercials, by the way. No, TJ Watt, who, again, far better than his brother, JJ. But let's see how the Commanders play against a top-level defense, which they really haven't faced this year. I think the big question in that game is going to be, will the Russell Wilson resurgence continue for the Steelers? George Pickens starting to look like the top talent that we thought he was going to be when he was drafted a few years ago. Now you bring Mike Williams in. You got the two-headed monster of Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren in the backfield. Will that offense be able to put up points on Dan Quinn's defense? This is going to be a great game. What's not going to be a great game is the Eagles and the Cowboys. Cowboys are done. Cowboys are finished. I've already gone on my rant about them. The Eagles, 6-2. The most underrated, overlooked 6-2 team of the year. Them and the Chargers. Chargers are what, 5-3, okay? But vastly different situations. Whereas the Chargers have one of the brilliant minds as head coach with Jim Harbaugh, the Eagles have the talented roster that the Chargers wish they had with an idiot for a head coach in Nick Sirianni, but somehow they still stumble and bumble and fumble their ways into victory. And they'll do it again this week because the Cowboys, without Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb is a question mark. Who knows who's going to be healthy on the defense? The Cowboys are in for a long, long slog for the rest of 2024. The resurgent Jets go into play the Arizona Cardinals. I'll tell you what, a preview of my pick. Again, I have not got the picks in yet. Preview of my pick for this game is, yes, I will go with the Jets again. They came through for me last week. They have had basically an extra couple of days to rest. Not like the Bears put up a huge physical challenge for the Cardinals, but I don't know what the Cardinals are. I don't know what the Arizona Cardinals are. I don't really see Kyler Murray being outstanding. Marvin Harrison Jr. is hit and miss. James Conner's the only consistently good player on that team, maybe along with tight end Trey McBride, whereas I know the Jets roster is stellar up and down. Underachieving beyond all belief, but stellar from top to bottom. And I think that win in this little extra rest period, the win against the Texans, the extra couple days of rest, maybe they come together and I think they make their playoff run. Lions at the Texans, we've already talked about both teams. Texans don't seem to know who they are. The Lions are a machine. Lions are going to win. And then on Monday night, November the 11th, Dolphins at the Rams. Last gasp for Tua, for Tyreek Hill. Do they show up out on the West Coast, or do they fall apart completely as their coach only cares about smoking a bowl, whereas Sean McVay is an absolute genius on the sidelines? I think the Rams continue their forward momentum, and the Rams get above 500, and the Dolphins start thinking about what they're going to do in the offseason, as they will drop to 2-7. All right, in college football, teams that we root about, care for locally here, for Dave, for everybody in the listening area outside of the Sports Frenzy studios here in northern Indiana, it's Notre Dame. You kids know I'm not a Notre Dame fan. And the voters seem to really be going back and forth. Now, the first CFP rankings will be out in a couple hours. Again, we're a day early in taping. So next week we will go through the CFP rankings for the first time. Right now we still got the AP rankings. Notre Dame jumping up, down, back, forth. Notre Dame at number 10 right now in the AP rankings. Miami, my team, jumping up a slot to number 4, getting ahead of Penn State, who lost to Ohio State. Miami, of course, beat Duke 53-31 as Notre Dame took the week off. Miami's got another bye week coming, so things will, of course, even out before the end of November. Big news, though. Those two schools, the Conquistadors, Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and my Miami Hurricanes, will butt heads down in South Florida to start the year in 2025. Guess what? I don't care. I don't care. I'm focused on this year because Cam Ward won't be with the Hurricanes next year. So the team will look entirely different. Notre Dame will look entirely different. I firmly expect the fact that Notre Dame will probably blow the doors off the Hurricanes because Cam Ward is a once-in-a-lifetime talent, and I'm going to enjoy him this year and worry about the Hurricanes this year and not worry about Notre Dame to start the season off 10 months from now. But it'll be a spectacle. Who's going to break out the Catholics versus convicts shirts? Yes, I am a hypocrite since I went to Notre Dame, but I root for Miami. I actually went to both schools. So there you go. I went to Miami for my freshman year and then finished out at Notre Dame. Another interesting little tidbit before we move on to last week's games and then this week's preview. The Indiana Hoosiers. How about the IU Hoosiers? Here in Indiana, ranked ahead of Notre Dame for the first time in, I believe, 40 years plus? I think it goes back to the late 70s. Don't quote me on that, but I think you have to go back to the late 70s. The last time Indiana was ranked ahead of Notre Dame in the national polls, the AP poll. The Hoosiers leapfrog Notre Dame, and IU is now number 8 in the nation. Good for Indiana. They've got a massive showdown coming with Ohio State, I believe, in a couple weeks. That will be the true test. That will be the true test. But if Indiana goes through with only one loss, and that's the loss, and maybe it's a close game, can you keep them out of the 12-team playoff, or do they get in? Wouldn't it be ironic if Notre Dame kept them out? Both teams with one loss? Very conceivable. Could happen. All right, last week in the college ranks, I mentioned Ohio State goes into Happy Valley and beats Penn State. Number 3, beaten by number 4. Dave and I called that one. James Franklin just can't win the big game. He just can't win the big games. And Ryan Day, Dave and I agree, is not the greatest head coach in the world, but he can stumble and figure out a way to win games like this. When he's playing the best in the SEC, then it becomes a different story. And now we've seen here earlier this year, his team put up a great fight against Oregon on the road. The new look Big Ten. So now there are a lot more big bullies in the playground to fight, to deal with in the Big Ten now. It's not just Michigan. You don't have to just get past Michigan now. Now you got to worry about Oregon, maybe later on USC. We all know USC and UCLA right now are awful, but new members of the Big Ten as well. But Oregon, of course, is the big one. The big boy that came in, the big bully on the block now, taking over in their first year, the Big Ten. Could we see a rematch? Maybe two. Could we possibly see Ohio State and Oregon battle it out for the Big Ten title, and then maybe, depending on who wins, could they meet somewhere down the road in the playoffs? It looks right now like it's Ohio State, Oregon. If Indiana is for real, they could have a say when it comes to the Big Ten. Mississippi, have they figured it out? They've got a huge test this week. They blow out Arkansas 63-31. Lane Kiffin has to run the table. Has to run the table in order to get into the top 12 and get into the playoffs. And we're going to talk about the big test they've got coming up this weekend in a minute. Texas A&M, just when you thought they had it all figured out, the program was back on solid ground, steady footing after the Jimbo Fisher years. Well, guess what? They're not. Now they're on shaky ground in terms of making it to the playoffs. They'd worked their way all the way up to number 10 in the AP poll, and then they go down and get destroyed by the Cocks. Dave was on an island on this one, and he got it right. He was on Cock Island. South Carolina at home destroys Texas A&M 44-20. And then in a battle of who could possibly face the Miami Hurricanes for the ACC title, Clemson, by the way, lost. So this game gained even more importance because of that. SMU, number 20 SMU at home, beats up on number 18 Pittsburgh 48-25. Yes, SMU now in the ACC. The new look landscape of college football, kids. You gotta love it, right? So, that's your recap for last week. We're looking at possibly, maybe, an SMU Miami ACC title game. We'll see how things play out over the next couple weeks. This week's games. Now, once again, we're doing things a little different this week. This is just a general kind of rundown, no picks, as this is Election Day, Tuesday, November the 5th, a day early. Got REO Speedwagon concert tomorrow night, so kind of screwed up our taping schedule. So the games that you should check out on our Facebook page Thursday night, all 8 of our panelists will have their picks in. Not going to run through all of them, but the big ones are number 2, Georgia, on Saturday, November the 9th, at number 16, Mississippi. This is the game that I was alluding to a few minutes ago where I said Lane Kiffin and Mississippi have got to win this game. It's a tall task, but it's doable. I don't like the way Georgia is playing. I don't like the way Carson Beck is playing. Mississippi has got the advantage at quarterback. They're at home. They have got to win this game. If they lose this, they're out. Georgia's in. Guaranteed. Number 21, Colorado, on the road playing Texas Tech. Texas Tech, one of those goofy, weird teams Dave and I joke about, seems to make it onto our pick slate every week. And then last week we didn't put them on, and they win big. Big upset game against, I believe it was Iowa State. Iowa State or Kansas State. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but they knock off one of the Big 12 power teams. So now can they do it again? At home, can they knock off Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, and Shedeur Sanders? Can they knock off Colorado, ranked number 21? And then we've got number 11 Alabama at number 14 LSU. Two SEC teams. Now the SEC wasn't really hard to see this coming. The SEC was going to beat up on each other. I don't know if we expected it to this extent. But conceivably, we could see almost all of the SEC teams with 2 losses. This is what happens when you make your conference. You bring in Texas, you bring in Oklahoma. You make your conference so powerful that you can't really have an alpha dog. You can't really have a dominant team. By my count right now, you've got Texas and you've got Georgia. Alabama was the top dog in terms of the SEC conference play schedule. But then they lose. So now things have really evened out. So if Mississippi knocks off Georgia, that will knock Georgia down to 2 losses. And now you've got number 11 Alabama, number 14 LSU. This is an elimination game to me. Both these teams desperately need to win this game in order to cling to hopes that they can make it into the final 12. The loser, I think, is out. So that's going to do it. That's not all the college games we're picking this week, but like I said, check out the slate Thursday night on the Sports Frenzy 2.0 Facebook page. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to baseball, NASCAR. Like I said, a kinder, gentler edition of Sports Frenzy 2.0 in that we're not going to do any dumbasses this week. So hang with me for about 15 or 20 more minutes, kids, and I'll get you out so you can tune into CNN or Fox News or wherever you want to tune into to watch your election results. Me personally, I'm probably going to watch a Godzilla movie or watch Teacup on Peacock or the latest episode of The Penguin. All stuff that I will discuss this weekend, Saturday morning, for your Saturday morning hangover cure. But let's move on to baseball and our brief recap of the World Series. All right, so as you know by now, the Dodgers destroyed the Yankees 4-1 in the 2024 World Series. And as always, it seems to happen all the time. Dave and I record this podcast weekly on Wednesday night, and there's always, without fail, something big that happens either right as we're finishing up taping or Thursday morning. So in this case, as we were recording last week's episode, was Game 5 of the World Series, where the Dodgers were down 5-0. The Yankees blow that 5-0 lead with a bunch of really embarrassing miscues in the field. They retake the lead, and they still blow it again. So the Dodgers won 7-6. Freddie Freeman, undoubtedly the MVP. Of course, jacking 4 home runs in the 5 games. Ties a World Series record with 12 RBI in the series. I think Freddie Freeman locked himself into Cooperstown with this performance. I'm very cynical about the Hall of Fame, as you guys know. I think they let too many people in who shouldn't be in, and they excluded too many because of gambling, Pete Rose, steroids, Barry Bonds, and other stupid, ridiculous reasons, politics, Curt Schilling. I mean, it's still to me an absolute travesty that Pete Rose, Barry Bonds, Curt Schilling aren't in the Hall of Fame, but Scott Rowland and Todd Helton are. But Freddie Freeman, I think, just solidified himself as a first ballot Hall of Famer with this performance to go with his previous career, of course, including his time with Atlanta. And he did it, by all accounts, completely and totally banged up. Not only did he have an ankle issue where he was hobbling around, he had a finger that was healing up from an injury late in the season, back in August, I believe. And then we find out that he also had broken rib cartilage. This is the kind of guy you want on your team. Football, basketball, baseball, doesn't matter the sport. This is the kind of fighter, the guy you want on your team. I cannot tell you how much respect I gained for Freddie Freeman this off-season, this postseason. Of course, baseball is going to crow about the fact that, oh, these are the best ratings for the World Series since 2017. 15.8 million viewers on average for the games. I don't think that's a lot to brag about, considering the fact that you had the 2 biggest markets in the country. You are supposed to have massive ratings, and yet you still couldn't beat the Cubs and the Indians. Yes, back then it was the Indians, not the Guardians. Let alone a lot of the series that came before, when baseball was much more popular and you didn't have 5 or 6 teams that would overspend to the point they would just basically destroy the rest of the teams. And there is no apology for the rest of the teams, because they're cheap bastards who won't spend the money, as Dave and I have argued about for years on this podcast. The Pirates, even the Guardians, for shame. And throw another 7 or 8, 9 teams in the mix there. There needs to be a cap, and there needs to be a floor. Force everybody to spend at least $120 million, but do not allow anybody to spend over $250 million. Those are rough numbers, but try to make it more competitive. And Rob Manfred, of course, the sackless, ballless wonder that he is, will never, ever, ever do it. He's going to take this as a victory. Oh, look, best ratings in 7 years on TV. Isn't it awesome? And then we'll get it again next year, because we'll just let the New York teams and the Dodgers spend and spend and spend. And I have said this countless times to you kids. That is not a healthy model for a sport. The NFL has it right. Everybody spends roughly the same amount of money. It all boils down to the ownership and the intelligence of the general manager. Draft the right players. Hire the right coaches. That's why people watch the NFL. Eventually, we're going to get tired of the Kansas City Chiefs, but you cannot argue with the fact that what they're doing is working and working at possibly the greatest level ever. And every other team had the chance, money-wise, ownership-wise, coaching-wise. Somebody else could have hired Andy Reid away from the Philadelphia Eagles, but they didn't. There were a bunch of other teams, including the Chicago Bears, that had a chance to draft Patrick Mahomes, and they didn't. That's why the NFL works. The NBA, I still don't understand why people think the NBA is an attractive sport. Now, I'm hearing that the ratings so far this year are awful for the NBA. We'll get to the NBA in a minute. But I can't understand, outside of the NFL's business model, maybe the NHL working well. I kind of like seeing the Winnipeg Jets actually being the best team in the NHL, something different. So maybe that model's working as well, but baseball does not work. Basketball does not work. So we've also got to talk about the Yankees. They've got a big decision to make with Juan Soto. Really not their decision to make, though, because now Juan Soto is officially a free agent. And we've already heard well over 10 teams have already contacted his agents. This is going to get ugly. And I have heard a couple people who I respect in the media talking about this, saying this is it. This is it. Now we'll see crazy, nutsy, cuckoo money when it comes to the NFL. Patrick Mahomes, Jaden Daniels, maybe, if he keeps playing at a high level when his next contract is due in a few years. We'll see with the NFL as their business model grows, the revenue grows, the media rights money grows. Yes, the players will get more. That's the way it's supposed to work. The success of the business pays the players, pays the employees, pays the owners more. That's the model that works. Baseball's not going to work. Somebody thinks it's going to be a smart move to pay Juan Soto between $600 and $700 million for his contract. Now, he's young enough where this contract could go 12 years, maybe even 13 years. Now, last year we saw what I thought was underhanded and pathetic. And again, a lack of leadership on the part of Rob Manfred, that he didn't somehow invoke the clause about the best interest of the game and tell the Dodgers, you can't do this with Shohei Ohtani. You can't bring him in for $2 million and defer $30 million every year for a decade. Could we see that again with Juan Soto? What would stop the Dodgers from doing that again? Well, technically, even though the Dodgers deferred the actual payment of the money, and yes, I know it's well over $30 million. It was probably, $50 million a year? Whatever it ends up being that gets deferred into the 2030s. that money did technically count against the current luxury tax ceiling for the Dodgers. So a lot of people sit there and go, it's still not fair. I don't like it either. But could we see somebody jump in with a similar situation with Juan Soto? Do we see a desperate team from San Francisco who got shunned by Aaron Judge? Do we see the Toronto Blue Jays jump into this, who supposedly were in the mix until the very end for Shohei Ohtani? Do we see the Chicago Cubs? Oh, sorry, never mind. Yeah, thanks, Cody Bellinger. We'll get to that in a minute. But there are only a handful of teams, 5 or 6 teams, who are really going to be able to afford to give Juan Soto the contract he's going to be looking for. And it will just create a further disparity between the bottom and the top in baseball. And it's not a healthy business model. Now let's look at Garrett Cole. Very interesting scenario that played out here over the past week. Garrett Cole, arguably the best pitcher in baseball, but he's getting older. He's getting up there in years. He had an opt-out clause in his contract. Now, the opt-out was kind of interesting in that he said, I'm opting out. And the clause, the contract says what you can do to retain me, speaking to you, New York Yankees, is you tack on another year at the same $36 million pay rate that my current contract pays me. Good for the Yankees. Good for the Yankees. The Yankees said no. No, you either go out there and you test free agency, or you come back and you do not invoke that 5th year for $36 million. And I do believe that Scott Boras, that cancer, is Garrett Cole's agent. And again, another loss, another big L for Scott Boras, as they went back to the Yankees and said, okay, fine. We'll keep our current contract intact. We're sorry. We didn't mean to try to opt out. Please. Can we just go back to the way things were and be friends again? So poor, pitiful Garrett Cole is stuck with the Yankees 4 more years and only $144 million left. Yes, that is $36 million a year. For the next 4 years. Poor guy didn't get that 5th year for $36 million. Such a tragic tale for Garrett Cole. And of course I mentioned the Cubs. God damn it, Cody Bellinger. I knew this was going to happen. I knew it. Cody Bellinger staying with the Cubs. Because, of course, he had one of these Boras opt-out deals. And because he was dinged up through a big part of last year, 2024, I refer to that as last year, but you kids know what I'm referring to. He says, well, why wouldn't I take, $27.5 million or whatever it is. I thought it was 30. Now I'm seeing on Spot Track it's $27.5 million. Whatever. It's still going to hamstring the Cubs in terms of being able to go out and, number one, sign any new free agents, And number two, break up this lineup, because why do we want the same lineup in 2025 that we had in 2024? These guys can hit in the clutch, can hit for power, can hit for average. And a big key to this was getting Cody Bellinger out of town so we could shake things up a little bit. So now it's going to be the same old bullshit. It's going to be, the infield's already locked in. The infield is Isaac Paredes, Dansby Swanson, Nico Horner, and Michael Busch. And I don't have a problem with that, but it was the outfield where I was hoping for some differences, some changes. Yes, congratulations to Ian Happ, as he won the Gold Glove in left field in the National League. I still think he's vastly overrated, and I would not mind if they traded him. I just don't like him. He doesn't fit in the lineup. He's not a leadoff hitter. He's got good power, but not great power. He's inconsistent when it comes to batting average and RBIs. I wanted an entirely revamped outfield, maybe with the exception of Seiya Suzuki, who another person due congratulations. He is a finalist for the National League Outfielder Silver Slugger Award. But I really wanted a different outfield. I was happy with the infield. Hate the outfield, and of course now the outfield looks like it's going to come back completely intact, which means hopefully the front office will invest all the money we have in pitching. The professor, of course, Kyle Hendricks, is gone. Love Kyle Hendricks, one of my favorite Cubs of all time. But now, with his money coming off the books, declining the option for Drew Smyly, the Cubs can make a run at one big-time starting pitcher, and it's either got to be Corbin Burnes or Max Fried. You have got to bring one of those two guys in around Shota Imanaga and Justin Steele. If you're going to have this weak-ass offense where nobody can hit over 270 and nobody can hit more than 25 home runs and nobody can drive in 100 runs, then you better goddamn well have a shutdown rotation. And it's going to have to be Steele, Imanaga, and like I said, either Fried or Burnes. You're going to have a top three in that rotation that are just killer. Do I have any faith in the Cubs that they'll do this? No. Because on top of that, they're going to have to fortify the bullpen. All their money now, with Bellinger coming back, all the money now is going to have to be funneled into the pitching. And they've got to be unbelievably smart and precise with how they spend this money. Thanks, Cody. Thanks a lot. We've already got trades going on in the baseball ranks. Although now, here over the next couple months, we'll start to see some free agency signings. Although don't expect the Juan Soto sweepstakes to end anytime soon. As you know, over the last 3 or 4 years, this stuff drags out almost to spring training. So I wouldn't expect to hear a Juan Soto deal until January at the earliest. Now you might hear about some other second-tier signings. And of course, that's where the Cubs obviously live, since now they've decided to cry poverty and they don't spend money anymore. But the Braves traded Jorge Soler to the Angels for starting pitcher Griffin Canning. We'll see how that plays out. The Braves are so smart. The Braves are so smart in how they run their organization that this seems to me to be a brilliant move for them. The Angels are just idiots. I'm not saying that Jorge Soler is a bad player, but he is very one-dimensional. You want a guy who's going to hit 25 home runs a year, Jorge Soler is your guy. He's not going to do much else. Of course, the Braves brought him in hoping to get a little jolt after he had been a key part of their World Series win a few years ago. Now they bring in, knowing they're probably going to lose Max Fried to free agency, bring in a solid starting pitcher to help their rotation in Griffin Canning. Atlanta has got to be one of the top 5 best run organizations in baseball. Then, of course, we have what's going on in St. Petersburg with the Tampa Bay Rays. We all know about the devastation that they endured through Hurricane Milton. And we've seen the pictures of how the fiberglass roof at the Tropicana Dome got shredded. And of course, that stadium was not prepared for anything like this. Governor DeSantis pulled people out, as that was supposed to be a staging area for rescue relief. And then when the estimates of wind strength came in, he said, nope, get everybody out. It's not going to hold, and it did not. So now they're trying to figure out, what are we going to do with the Tampa Bay Rays? It still looks like to me, by all accounts, they're going to be stuck at a minor league facility, kind of what you're going to see with the Oakland A's. Soon to be the Las Vegas A's, who will be playing in Sacramento. So will they be the Sacramento A's for 3 years? I don't know. But they're going to probably put the Rays in a minor league facility somewhere in the Tampa-St. Pete area. But there is a slight chance, a slight glimmer of hope, as St. Petersburg has approved $6.5 million to clean up the damage that was done to the Trop. Waterproof areas that were not set up for waterproofing, and maybe possibly set up a temporary drainage system, because that stadium, that field, is not set up to drain in the case of rain. I don't think $6.5 million sounds like it's nearly enough to fix all the problems that stadium will have. I don't believe it can be converted with that kind of money to an open weather stadium, but there are still people who are holding out hope that maybe, possibly, they can make it work. I don't think so. I think it's going to have to be one of the local minor league stadiums, even stretching as far as Orlando to the Wide World of Sports minor league facility for the Atlanta Braves. And I know Dave's not here to wrap up baseball. Dave's not here. But Yoan Moncada, one of the few name players on his Chicago White Sox, the team turned down the 2025 option for him, so he goes bye-bye, giving Will Venable even less to work with coming up next year. This is going to be a long, nasty, arduous slog for the White Sox to get back to relevancy. I feel bad for Will Venable. If he can somehow avoid 100 losses over the next couple years in his his first 2 years of managing the White Sox, that will be a tremendous victory, a tremendous achievement for him. That you've got to basically hope to do what the Baltimore Orioles did recently the Astros and the Cubs did over the last 15 years. You've got to basically blow it all up, rebuild from scratch with young players, and then start to attract free agents when you show glimmers and signs of hope. The problem is, the difference is the ownership for those teams, the Cubs, the Orioles, and the Astros, were willing to spend money to keep the team viable, to keep their stadiums viable. Whereas I don't know if Jerry Reinsdorf and the White Sox front office are willing to do that. All right, before we get to NASCAR, guy I hate. I'll just say it right out front. I'll say it. I will not be ashamed to admit it. I'll acknowledge it because, yes, he is a part of baseball lore. He is a part of baseball history. But I hate him. He turns things political. He's arrogant. He thinks he's smarter than everybody else in the world, and you just want to punch him in the face. And that is one Bob Costas. But everybody's bowing down to Bob Costas because he announced he is retiring from baseball play-by-play. That does not mean we're rid of him for good. He will still stick his nose in every once in a while and do baseball commentary or jump in and do color every once in a while on a show. I cannot tell you how much I hate Bob Costas. And this goes back years to when he had to do a commentary on gun violence during a sporting event. He had to stick his political beliefs in because he's smarter than us. He knows more than us. Gee, kids, does this sound like pretentious media, Hollywood types to you? God knows they would never do that, right? Kind of fitting that we're discussing that on Election Day. Dave's Blackhawks in hockey. Blackhawks not doing bad. Not doing bad at all. Hopefully they keep some momentum going here so next week when the Conquistador comes back, he can revel in a little bit of this semi-success story for the Blackhawks. Blackhawks are 5-7-1, 11 points. Not terrible. Not bad, considering they're another team trying to rebuild from the scrap heap. Rebuild with the young players and the high draft picks. Then, of course, I mentioned basketball. My team is screwed. My team is done already. Terrible, terrible news for the Magic. After getting off to a great start, Paolo Banchero, 3-1 start for the Magic. Their star player, Paolo Banchero, former number 1 overall pick, tears his oblique. He is out indefinitely, and the Magic have since lost 4 straight. They do not have anybody on that roster to back him up to the point where this is going to be a free fall for the Magic. And again, I don't know. It's indefinite. I don't know how long Banchero is going to be out. Could we see a similar situation to what we saw decades ago with the San Antonio Spurs? Remember the year where David Robinson got hurt, and that team had nothing on the roster other than him, and they ended up, I'm not saying tanking, but when you lose your one great all-star player, if the roster's not built properly, you're going to fall apart. And that's what's going to happen with the Magic. That's what happened with the Spurs decades ago. And they lucked into the number 1 pick. And they got Tim Duncan. Now, do I think the Magic will fall apart that much? No, but they could still secure a top 2, a top 3 pick, given the fact that now we're looking at maybe they win 25 games this year. I mean, a torn oblique is going to take a while to come back from. So we shall see. We will see what happens with the Magic. But my team, so my football team is awful. I'm writing them off with the Bears. My basketball team, I'm already writing off with the Magic. All I've got left is the Hurricanes. The Miami Hurricanes, my one lone bright and shining star. So now I have to stress out this week about playing Georgia Tech. I have to stress out every week with the Hurricanes because their defense just isn't that good. But teams that are good in the NBA right now, got to give some kudos, some props to these other teams. If you are a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, 8-0. 8-0 to start the season. I think this is the first time they've gone 8-0 since the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. And then one of the favorites to win the whole thing this year, not surprising, the Oklahoma City Thunder with Chet Holmgren and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander are 7-0 to start off the 2024-25 NBA campaign. Now, Amazon, not perfect, but very shrewd in terms of their business model. We all know they have the NFL now, and they will have a Black Friday game on Amazon Prime Video, not only this year, but next year in 2025. But they're also getting the NBA next year. Remember, I find it amazing how that lawsuit just went away, where Warner Brothers Discovery and TNT said, hey, the NBA didn't honor their deal. We matched the offer from Amazon. Why don't we get to keep rights? And they just kind of said, no, you don't. We don't want you anymore. We want the bright, shiny new toy that is Amazon. And I have never heard anything in terms of a legal ruling saying that, Amazon, the NBA, they're within their rights to do this. So I guess Amazon is going to get the NBA starting next season. So they're going to pair like wine and cheese. They're going to pair the NFL with the NBA. They're going to have a Black Friday afternoon football game. You cannot have a night football game on Friday nights until early December in the NFL. You cannot interfere with high school football. That's why the Black Friday game has to kick off mid-afternoon. But you can have the NBA, so there's going to be a football game next year, Black Friday 2025, mid-afternoon, and then after that, you're going to get a big-time NBA game on Amazon Prime Video. Now, in terms of college basketball, the season is starting up right now. We've had some games already. We've already had one big, impressive showing from Gonzaga. Gonzaga blew out Baylor. Both teams ranked in the top 10. So for one top 10 team this early on to blow out another top 10 team, pretty impressive. So Mark Few and Gonzaga making an early statement, blasting Baylor to start off the 2024-2025 college basketball season. Then, of course, we've got the WNBA. Oh boy. The gift that keeps on giving. Okay, so I've admitted, Dave's not here, so I will admit once again that I indulged way too much here in 2024 in watching the WNBA. I got sucked in. Yes, because of Caitlin Clark. I don't know why. I never watched her play college basketball. But maybe there was a glimmer of hope in my black and darkened soul where I wanted to give women's sports a chance. I am not the biggest fan of women's sports. I love women, don't get me wrong. Maybe not in the ways that are politically correct, but I did want to give women's sports a chance. I hate soccer, so I know women's soccer really, compared to men's soccer, is much more entertaining, especially here in the U.S., but I just hate soccer overall. So we've talked about this in the past. I don't like women coaching football. I don't see how that even makes any sense. But women's basketball makes sense to me. And now we had this influx of great talent from the college ranks with Caitlin Clark and, of course, Angel Reese. And so, yes, I watched a lot of the WNBA this year. But there is a fundamental flaw in this league, and now we have seen it come to pass. Last week, we talked about the fact that out of the 12 teams, yes, I know the 13th team is coming soon, the expansion draft is coming soon, but out of the 12 teams that are currently in the WNBA, seven of them fired their head coaches. And as we predicted last week, yes, we could do. I fucking told you so. Stephanie White, former player, former coach for the Indiana Fever, is now the new Indiana Fever head coach. And she arguably takes over the most promising franchise in the WNBA with Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. Now, things going on outside of the WNBA trying to, in some ways, prop up women's sports even more. We're not going to get into the whole equal pay crap because I'm over that. I am over that completely and totally. When you have got a sport that's losing money where the NBA, and I still don't know where the NBA is getting all their money, has to subsidize the WNBA, I don't want to hear about equal pay. Because if your sport can't pay the bills, if your sport can't keep up ratings-wise, popularity-wise with the big boys, he said boys, sexist, misogynist, wrong. No, let's see you make up all the ground with ratings, make up all the ground with attendance. Here's an idea. Expand your schedule, expand your playoffs even more than you've already talked about. The NBA plays 82 games. Why can't you play 82 games? Expand your playoffs. You're starting to expand your roster of teams. Go from 13, I'd go 13 to 18 right away next year. Expand another 5 teams. You can't tell me there are not 5 more people out there, given the immense growth of the WNBA, 5 more entrepreneurs out there or groups of entrepreneurs that wouldn't be willing to buy into a WNBA team. Patrick Mahomes is talking about Kansas City. He's willing right now to write a check to buy in and start a WNBA franchise in Kansas City. Jump on this right now. This is what you've got to do. But until then, I don't want to hear about pay inequity. Because what happens is you get Caitlin Clark being offered $1 million from this upstart unrivaled league, is what it's called. Unrivaled. It's one of these 3-on-3 leagues. We've seen this with the men. The retired players, the players that can't cut it in the NBA, play in Ice Cube's. I believe Ice Cube is the one that's running the 3-on-3 league on the men's side. And I still don't understand how that's making money. I still don't understand who's going to see this. I know they do have a media rights deal, but still. The NBA, the WNBA does too, and they're losing money, so let's see the books. I want to talk to the accountants and the financiers. But anyway, Caitlin Clark gets offered $1 million. But she's got to make a decision here soon because the 3-on-3 women's unrivaled league begins play, I believe, in January of 2025. So she's going to do both. She's got to decide now. She can do both. But I wonder if there's some type of clause or something in her WNBA contract that prohibits her from playing in another league. Time-wise, she could pull it off. Not a problem. So lots of changes, lots of decisions here coming up for Caitlin Clark, and I feel bad for her. She's due some time off. She's due some time just to settle back and relax. Because she went from her college career where there was all that focus on her and immediately had to jump into the WNBA where there was all that attention and focus on her. And now she finally gets a little bit of time off and all of a sudden more attention, more focus. You got a new head coach in Stephanie White. You got this offer on the table from Unrivaled. See, in the end, this should all be good for women's sports, but somehow the media and the people that run things will end up making it bad. Now, before we get to NASCAR, I did want to do a Clint Eastwood Badass of the Week. Since we're not doing any dumbasses this week, here on Election Day 2024, and there are no moments of silence, by the way, either. So there's no moments of silence, no dumbasses. Trying to keep things just a little bit more normal. Take away a little bit of the negativity, because God knows here in the coming hours we're going to get plenty of it. But even the Clint Eastwood Badasses of the Week that I chose are going to cause controversy. Because I chose two people that I initially were going to call dumbasses. So let me explain here, since I've got a little bit of time. Again, not anything coming up. NASCAR is going to be it. We're going to do NASCAR. We're going to wrap up Sports Frenzy for the week. Again, tomorrow night, the night Dave and I would normally tape, we're rocking out in Grand Rapids, Michigan to REO Speedwagon. Hopefully the country will not be burned to the ground, so the concert will go off without a hitch. But I decided to flip things 180 degrees. Instead of going and taking these guys and calling them dumbasses, for once I will side with the star celebrity, the star athlete. Because at some point, you've got to draw the line in the sand. You have got to say enough is enough with these nut job hecklers and these crazy fans and these idiots in the media. You've got to draw a line and say enough is enough. You don't get to talk about this. You don't get to call my family names or mention them in a way and then turn it around and disparage me while referencing them. So yes, I'm talking about Jason Kelce, who I don't like. I can't stand Jason Kelce. As a football player, definite, awesome Hall of Famer. The minute he walked off the field, he has become an idiotic caricature of what you don't want in a sports celebrity who becomes commentator overnight, who becomes a pop culture icon overnight, who's making cereal with his brother. We don't want that. By all accounts, Jason Kelce's an idiot to me. But, you shouldn't have somebody heckling him, calling his brother names. I don't like his brother either. And I don't really give two ripped shits. Him dating Taylor Swift doesn't bother me or affect me one way or the other. You shouldn't have somebody calling his brother names, yelling in his face, trying to take video, entice him, antagonize him. And then finally, when Jason Kelce snaps, grabs the phone and smashes it, I feel bad for him. I don't think he should have had to get on ESPN and explain himself. I think basically he should have been able to say, yeah, I was dealing with a fucktard who's calling my brother names, and he stuck his phone in my face, so I grabbed it and smashed it. What do you think about that? What would you do if you were in my shoes? But in this namby-pamby snowflake day and age we live in, he had to give a pseudo-apology. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing for him. He really didn't apologize. He kind of explained what he did. And then we have Joel Embiid. Now, I'm not a fan of him either. We've been ripping on him here the last couple of weeks on Sports Frenzy because of how he has not been playing, getting paid to not play because his knee hurts, his knee's sore. Oh my God, pain management. It pisses me off because I just told you a few minutes ago about my guy on my team, Paulo Banchero, who literally tore his oblique. He's got a legitimate injury. And Joel Embiid, once again, I'm just not really feeling right. I'm sore. Now, again, you cross a line. You want to rip into somebody, rip into them. But don't bring up family. Don't bring up friends. Don't bring up girlfriends or close associates or whatever it might be. Don't get into somebody's personal life. And we have a reporter who did that with Joel Embiid, who referenced his son, his brother, in an article, and then turned it right around within a paragraph, referencing those two and saying Joel Embiid was basically a scumbag for not playing basketball and not being in shape, yet still getting the money that he's getting from the 76ers. The last part I'm with. The last part I am down with 100%. You can rip on him all you want. Rip on him all you want for being a lazy idiot. But don't bring other family members into play, especially kids and family members of the player who have died tragically. I mean, that's gutless. That's gutless and terrible, awful writing. So again, normally I would have put Jason Kelce and Joel Embiid in the dumbass of the week category. But I thought about it. I pondered it. I contemplated it. And I said, no, you know what, in the end, at some point, one last time I'll say it, draw the line in the sand. So, in a roundabout, kooky, weird kind of way, two guys that I don't like at all are my Clint Eastwood badasses of the week, Jason Kelsey and Joel Embiid, for standing up and saying enough is enough with the trolls, the harassment from the fans, the harassment from the media. You went too far. So good for them. Now, as I mentioned, not going to close out the show the normal way. We're going to do our NASCAR talk and then call it quits here on election night, November the 5th, 2024. Hope you went out and voted today. There is no right choice. Your vote is your vote. You guys know how much I can't stand the media and anybody who bullies you into thinking one way or the other. You do the research. You look at the topics. You look at the issues and you vote for who you want to vote for. It's your goddamn vote. No celebrity in Hollywood, no famous athlete, nobody should bully you or tell you. No family member should be able to bully you or tell you how to vote. So hopefully you voted in good conscience the way you wanted to. So we're going to do NASCAR and then we're done. But of course, first, this is the part where Dave would normally jump in just to let you know where you can find Sports Frenzy 2.0 each and every week. Spotify, Good Pods, Pocket Cast, Apple, Overcast, Castbox, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeartRadio. And of course, as I've mentioned throughout this episode, picks aren't all in yet since we're doing this early. Check out the Facebook page Thursday night for the NASCAR picks for the final race of the season. Although I do have most of them in for NASCAR. But football picks, all the football picks will be posted Thursday night before kickoff. So check out the Facebook page for all of that. So like I mentioned, NASCAR. We've got one last race left, the championship race coming this Sunday, November the 10th from Phoenix. But NASCAR, of course, cannot figure out a way to do things without massive controversy. The Martinsville race, the final race in the round of 8 to eliminate down to the round of 4, the final race for final drivers to compete for the 2024 Cup Championship. Martin Truex Jr., always good at Martinsville, got the pole, but he faded out pretty quick after leading for about the first 40 laps. We talked about this a few weeks ago. I think he's just done. I don't think his heart is in it anymore. I think he just wants to wrap up the season, wrap up his obligations, which surprises me that he is going out with such a whimper because he's already committed to running the Daytona 500 next year. He's not acting like a guy who wants to continue to race. But we've seen this with Jimmy Johnson. We've seen this with other drivers where they just won't let go and won't go out gracefully. Now, guys like Jeff Gordon, Rusty Wallace, Kevin Harvick called it quits at the right time and at least put up a fight at the end of their careers. Hopefully, Martin Truex Jr. will put up a fight here at Phoenix. We'll see. We'll see. But Truex had the pole, faded out quickly, and then, of course, the drivers, the 8 drivers who were left, for the most part, Tyler Reddick, Joey Logano, already locked in. They really didn't put up much of a fight. So basically boiled down to the 6 that were left. Ryan Blaney, like I said, Tyler Reddick, Joey Logano, those two were both in. They didn't care. So it was Blaney, Byron, Christopher Bell had a shot at getting in. Chase Elliott had a shot at getting in. And what happened was, as I just alluded to a few minutes ago, an entire clusterfuck. Now you had William Byron for a while up there towards the front. You had, at the end, you really had Blaney, Elliott, Hamlin fighting it out for the last spot. Hamlin had to win. Elliott had to win. Blaney had to win. Byron and Bell were fighting for that final spot in the championship four on points. Now, Blaney ended up winning the race at Martinsville, and there was no controversy there. He ran a tremendous race. The defending champion will get a chance to go back-to-back this coming Sunday at Phoenix. But the problem was with that final spot, the points spot. And you had controversy on multiple levels for both Christopher Bell and William Byron. William Byron had something I don't like about NASCAR, which reminds me a lot of F1, is the team. And not just Hendrick versus Penske versus Gibbs. It's Chevy versus Ford versus Toyota. Byron could not lose one spot over the last 10 laps. And so two Chevy drivers, not on his team, but two Chevy drivers, Austin Dillon and Ross Chastain, got behind him and were preventing Brad Keselowski's Ford from getting forward, getting around them, and passing William Byron, so he would lose a point, and then Keselowski was just trying to race. He had nothing to gain or lose, other than a few extra points and a spot or two, making a little bit of extra money. But of course, it was all on the line for Rick Hendrick Motorsports, because they weren't going to get Elliott in. Larson wasn't going to get in. That was the other driver I'd forgotten about. Larson wasn't going to get in, even though he'd been fighting up at the top most of the day. So it was all down to points with Bell and Byron. And so you've got this Chevy blockade that you could tell 10 laps on Martinsville, no movement, as Chastain and Dillon just would not move, would run side by side, basically keeping anybody behind them from getting up to Byron and passing him and knocking Rick Hendrick out, knocking Chevrolet out of the final four. But then on the Toyota side, you've got Bubba Wallace claiming to have a flat tire, which allowed Christopher Bell to pass him, make up that point that he needed. But then unfortunately Bell, as he's passing Bubba Wallace, goes up into the wall and rides the wall. You cannot do that anymore. Now, my problem with it is, number one, this was not a Ross Chastain moment from a couple years ago, where Ross Chastain floored it, rode the wall for basically almost a quarter of the track in order to gain points and gain ground. I honestly think it was an innocent mistake by Christopher Bell. He lost control of the car, hit the wall, and he did not ride the wall. He got off the wall as quick as he could. It just wasn't quick enough for NASCAR. And so NASCAR penalized him 4 spots for doing that, which gave the 4th and final spot in the playoffs on points to William Byron. There is just hinky, nasty crap going on all around here. Was Bubba Wallace lying about a flat tire? Because, of course, he's Toyota. Christopher Bell's Toyota. You've got the Chevy blockade keeping the Ford of Brad Keselowski from genuinely and actually racing William Byron, which would have knocked him down another slot. I think this is NASCAR manipulating outcomes. You want to say they're fixing things? I'm not going to argue with you. Because NASCAR did not want 2 Penske's, and because, of course, the Penske's would have been Blaney winning the race and Logano, who won earlier to qualify. Didn't want 2 Penske's and 2 Gibbs cars in. Now, for the viewer, who cares? Nobody gives 2 rip shits. You got your final 4. They earned their way in. We don't care if it's Toyota, Ford, Chevy, Gibbs, Hendrick. We don't care. But behind the curtain, behind the scenes, oh, NASCAR, goddamn well, you know they want Rick Hendrick to have a driver in that final 4. And that you wonder why 2311 is suing NASCAR for manipulative practices. And they have got their Toyota in there. You got the 2 Toyotas. You were supposed to have the 2 Toyotas of Reddick and Bell. And then you got the 2 Penske Fords of Logano and Blaney. But of course, now the Bell Toyota gets pulled out. Gibbs gets nothing. Gibbs gets nothing. And instead they go with Rick Hendrick's Chevy. They wanted all 3 manufacturers represented. Ford, Toyota, Chevy. I still think it's manipulative garbage, and I hate it. I hate it. So once again, NASCAR's got to find a way to fuck everything up and taint their championship race. Now going back to last weekend, good news for Spire Motorsports. And Carson Hocevar, who's had a really good run here as of late in the number 77 car, his team recorded the fastest 4-tire pit stop in NASCAR Cup history. Now, of course, we know that they've changed the cars and the tires. Now it's one single lug nut. So that makes things a little bit different in terms of historical perspective, but at Miami, at Homestead, Miami, Carson Hocevar's team, 8.29 seconds on a 4-tire pit stop. And again, that is the fastest 4-tire pit stop in Cup history. Just once again, I ask you to keep everything in perspective. And remember that now everything goes around one center lug nut. You don't have to change all those different lug nuts on every tire. Kurt Busch, we mentioned him a few weeks ago and how much of an idiot he is. Amazes me. Drivers, professional drivers that go out and get drunk and get behind the wheel of a car. They should be the ones that know better than anybody not to do that. But somehow they still do it. Kurt Busch, something again, we would never, you and I would never, ever get this kind of consideration. But Kurt Busch gets a 60-day suspended jail sentence and 12 months unsupervised probation for a DWI, pleading guilty to DWI. We would be in jail. We would have our licenses taken away permanently. So finally, wrapping up Sports Frenzy 2.0 for Election Day, November the 5th, 2024. I do have 6 of our 8 picks in for the championship race at Phoenix Raceway. So let's go ahead and give those to you. For the first time, possibly ever, my pick will not be included. I still have a day left before the deadline. I am trying to figure out some kind of strategy. I know I'm never going to win this thing, the Frenzy Cup competition, among our 8 panelists, but the Big Blue W screwed me. This is what you get when you try to figure out what other people are thinking, what other people are going to do. And Bill screwed me completely. I would not have taken Christopher Bell last week if I'd known that Bill was not going to take Christopher Bell this week. He has a Christopher Bell pick left, and he left it on the table. I don't understand that. So he ends up taking out of the clear blue my pick, the guy that I had planned on taking all along for this race. So now I'm backing off. Gonna rethink things. Maybe I still take the same guy. Just not happy at all with the Big Blue W. And he's going to end up losing the Frenzy Cup. I had the lead going into the playoffs. He took over after a couple weeks. And nothing wrong with that. I wasn't as good with my picks as he was. But now Nick, the juggler, has jumped into the lead. He has done a great job coming from almost the back of the 6 qualified panel members, jumping up all the way to the front, and he has got a great pick for the final race. I think Nick's going to win this whole freaking thing. So as I mentioned, 6 of the 8 panelists with their picks in for the Cup Championship race at Phoenix. Nick, our leader, is taking Tyler Reddick. Once again, great pick. Nick did such a wonderful job of saving all the drivers he could until the very end, picking some early that maybe you wouldn't think of picking, a couple, but they got him enough points to get him through, and then he saved the big guns for the end. So Nick's taking Tyler Reddick. I mentioned Bill is now in second. Bill and Sam are taking last year's winner, Ross Chastain, the Melon Man. Like I said, I'm rethinking my strategy. I don't know what I'm going to do at this point. I will have my pick out. You will all see it Thursday night on the Facebook page. Dave is taking Joey Logano, one of the championship 4. Doug is taking Chase Elliott. And Aaron is taking Kyle Busch. So yes, 6 of the 8 picks are in. Mine is still pending, as is Mrs. C. But for the last time, as I mentioned with the football picks, as we're doing this early, wrapping it up on election night, November the 5th, all picks will be on the Facebook page, NASCAR and football, Thursday night by 7 o'clock. So be sure to check that out to see what all 8 of our expert panelists have picked in NASCAR for the last race of 2024 and the current week's NFL and NCAA football picks. And that's going to do it for Sports Frenzy 2.0, the Maestro Kevin Crane solo. I hope I kept you engaged, entertained, kept you away from politics, the idiot stew that is out there. Right now, as I'm wrapping this up, we're just getting to the point where polls are closing everywhere on the East Coast. So the chaos is about to begin. But we'll get through it. Have no fear, somehow, some way. All I know is I'm not leaving the house for at least the next 20 hours. But wherever you are, hopefully you're not in a big city. If you are, I thank you for listening, but then I would say duck and cover. Those of you out in the boondocks, you should be safe. I really hope for more from the people of America. But then I didn't have a lot of faith in the 2020 election and how things went with that. So why should I have any faith in the 2024 election and how things are going to go tonight and tomorrow and into the rest of the week, because the idiots in Arizona don't know how to count votes, and 4 years ago Pennsylvania was basically a shit show. So anyway, no more politics, no dumbasses, no moments of silence. That is it. We're done. We're over. Special early edition wrapped up for Sports Frenzy 2.0. The weekend edition, though, will drop as usual on Saturday morning. I will have some special stuff for you. Our TV shows, of course, you know what Dave and I have been watching. Tracker and Teacup and the Penguin and What We Do in the Shadows. I will update you on all of that. I will have a review of Godzilla and Kong, the New Empire, as we have just hit the 70th anniversary of Godzilla. And of course we had last year the tremendous, arguably the best Godzilla movie ever in Godzilla -1, out in theaters right now, re-released. If you have not seen Godzilla -1, check it out. So in tribute to Godzilla, I will review Godzilla and Kong, the New Empire on HBO Max. Music-wise, I will review the 4 new songs from Tears for Fears live album, Songs for a Nervous Planet, and I will review the Motley Crue EP Cancelled. Now, most of these songs we've talked about in the past, but since Dave's not here, and I've got to save my REO Speedwagon review for him for next week, that's what you're gonna get from the Maestro. But still a full-on, full-blown, full-length episode of the weekend edition this coming Saturday. And of course, even though Election Day will hopefully be over, the election will hopefully be wrapped up by Saturday, who knows? We'll wrap up things with a few last election year dumbasses of the week in the world of pop culture. And you know there's probably no shortage of them as we get down to the wire here. So, take care, everybody. We don't say it enough. We love you for listening to us each and every week, not only here with the sports edition, but the weekend edition. Thank you very, very much for checking us out here over the last 4 years. Dave and I kind of do this almost not only as a public service to you, but to rant and rave and vent and get things off our chest, and to just give us an excuse to hang out and drink beer, as we're best friends and we want to include you in our circle of friendship. So let's do some positivity here as we close out Sports Frenzy 2.0 this week. Take care of yourselves. Take care of the ones you love. Dave and I will be back together again in 7 days. Well, 8 days, since this is a little early. Hopefully the world will still be right. We'll still be okay. We'll still be living in a non-Mad Max post-apocalyptic world. And Sports Frenzy will be like the cockroach, and we will go on forever and ever. Nothing will kill us. Take care, everybody. Peace out. Talk to you next week.